Alright, so after a few days of notes, we're finally ready for our next program, and it's called Histogram. First bullet says, first off, make sure you have, to do this video, make sure you have this sheet, histogram info sheet. I'm also going to start you out on your hierarchy chart, so if you haven't picked up a blank hierarchy chart paper, do that now. But here we go. First bullet says, design and implement a program that reads a set of values in the range 1 to 100 from a file, and then creates a chart showing how often the values appeared. The chart should look like the one shown here, so it should look like this. It shows how many values fell in the range from 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and so on. Print one asterisk for each value read in. Okay, so you're basically going to read in this file. So it's called histogram input.dat. And all it is a bunch of numbers. And all of these numbers, if you look, they're random numbers between 1 and 100. And you're not actually caring about the actual number. You're caring about what range it's falling in. So for instance, 58 doesn't really matter that it's 58. It matters that it falls in the range 51 to 60. That's what this next bullet's saying. Create a driver class that contains the array of frequencies. And that's the first thing that you got to get in your head. It's not the actual values. That's what I was just talking about. So the array isn't going to be of size 100. It's just going to be of size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 intervals, and each interval has a certain number of values that fall in it. So you're going to make an array called freak, or something like that. And it's going to be of size 10. So you're going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And each slot represents an interval. Like this interval is 1 to 10. This interval is 11 to 20. This interval is 21 to 30, and so on. So when you read in these files, again, here's the file. The first number is 58. So it's going to read in 58. But since it's 58, 58 is going to be 51 to 60. So this would be 31 to 40, 41 to 50. Right here, 51 to 60. When I read in 58, I'm going to have a 1 in there now, because that means there's one value in there. All right, let's look at this again. Next value is 48. So when I read in 48, there's going to be one number in that slot now. After that, we have 29. There's going to be one number in that slot now. Now let's just say the next number was 52. Well, that would also fall in this slot. So now instead of a 1 there, there'd be 2 there, because there's 2 numbers that fall in that slot. Get the idea? Okay. We'll come back to that in a second. Well, one other thing I should say is I want you to use an efficient method. I don't want to see 10 if statements or even a switch statement. I mean, it'd be easy to say if num is less than 51, less than or equal to 51, or sorry, greater than or equal to 51 and less than 60, then slot 5 plus equals 1. Else if, I don't want that. I want to get a way that you can take this number, take 51, and say right away that goes in slot 5. And take 29 and say right away that goes in slot 2. Where would 78 go in? Slot 7. So you might be thinking already, how can I make 78 into 7, 52 into 5, 29 into 2? Shouldn't be too hard. The problem is, where does, let's say, 30 go? 30 also goes in slot 2. So I'd have to worry about that one case. The zeros, 30 goes in slot 2, 20 goes in slot 1, 10 goes in slot 0. maybe a little trickier. Anyways, we're going to create a histogram class that contains a method that will print the histogram. So it needs to do a method that's going to print the interval, a dash, and then as many stars as there are values that the frequency chart tells us there are. We need a method to return the interval containing the greatest frequency of data elements. So essentially, you need to know what position the greatest number falls into, and then return this interval. And if you're returning an interval, like if you're returning 1 to 10, you can return a string. Like the string can be 1 to 10. And then you need a method to return the greatest frequency. So a method to the greatest frequency would be the biggest number in this array. So you're basically just returning the biggest element in the array. Now this one, I wrote a method in your array note packet, that first big one that we did, that I started and said histogram. I'm pretty sure this method is written in there. So that you should just be able to go back to your notes and grab that right away. There's also a method that will find the position of the greatest frequency. I think in the note packet it was finding the position of the smallest, but you can modify that a little bit to find the position of the greatest. That'll really help with this method. Then I also want you to return the range. Don't return like 1, return 1 to 10. And then the method that will print the histogram might take a little bit of work, but again, you need to print out the range of values, and then for every, if this was a 9, I would print 9 stars here. So think about how you would do that. So those are the only 3 methods that you have to have in the histogram class. As always, you can have more, but you have to have at least those 3. Okay, so that's the program. A couple other things about the output. It must be formatted like this. It's got to have those vertical lines. So that's these. I want those in there, and they need to be lined up as they are here. I don't want them off at all, so maybe use tabs if you need to. It's okay if the numbers aren't lined up, like because this is a 1, this might be slightly off. Like it might be more like 1 to 10, off 1 character over here, but these need to be lined up. The stars should all be lined up. Should be a big bar underneath here, and these 2 things need to print out. Now, I don't think this is the actual output. Let me take you to Eclipse real quick and show you that. If I run the histogram program, yeah, this is what the actual output is. So interval with the highest frequency is 81 to 90, and the highest frequency is 18. And this is what all the stars should look like. Okay, so if you want to take a picture of this page quick, this is what your goal is. Okay, so if you finish this, turn this into Google Classroom as always, be done with it, and then if you want to, on the back, there is a bonus opportunity. So bonus says, instead of reading in numbers from a file, create each number randomly, thus creating 100 random numbers. So if you need to know how to do a random number, if you go back to your CS1 guessing game, we made random numbers from 1 to 100 in that. So if you want a refresher, look at your code for guessing game. Also create a border for the histogram. So this needs to show up. The rightmost vertical line should be immediately after the row with the greatest frequency. So I don't want the vertical line all the way over here. That needs to be based off of the row with the highest frequency. If you want to do this, you can submit a different code for guessing game bonus. Now the advantage to doing this is you're already done with the front side. That's already turned in. So I don't need a new hierarchy chart for this bonus. You can just modify your code and then submit a new output in the modified code. I don't need a hierarchy chart. Again, this is just showing you what I meant by the border. The border can't go all the way over here. It needs to be immediately after the greatest frequency. All right, so if you want to see the bonus working really quick, there's the bonus. And you can see here the interval with the highest frequency is 71 to 80 with 15 stars. If I run it again, since the numbers are created randomly, it happens to still be 71 to 80, but now it's got 18 stars. And if I run it a few different times, now it's 91 to 100 with 18 stars. It should be kind of, since they're randomly created, it should be kind of symmetrical. It's not going to be perfect, but as I run it, you can see it's always different, but that farthest border is always right after the line with the greatest stars. Okay, so again, that's a bonus. You don't have to do that. You have to turn in the front side first before you even work on the bonus. Make sure you get that submitted and then work on the bonus if you choose. Okay, so before you get started, grab that hierarchy chart paper and I'll give you a couple hints to get you going here. So you can list this as the histogram program. And we're reading it from a file, so obviously you'll need java.io.start and java.util.scanner. Variables we can kind of fill in, and I'll let you fill in as we go. In the public static void main, you're always going to have your right heading. So copy over that utilities class like usual. And this time it's called histogram. And then all of your other stuff like usual. You're going to make a histogram class object, an instance of the histogram class, histogram h1 equals new histogram. I'll give you access to those histogram methods that you write. And again, we're making an array of frequencies. And I told you it's going to be what type of an array. What's it holding? It's holding the number of times an integer occurs, so it's also an int. Something like int bracket bracket, you can call it freq equals new int. What should the size be? There's 10 intervals, so size 10. And then you're going to read in from files, so you'll have your try, catch, and all that kind of stuff. And the file you're reading in from is called histogram.dat. Oh, sorry, it's called histogram input.dat. Okay. And then you don't know how many numbers are in the file. There aren't necessarily 100 in this file. I'm not really sure how many there are. So you'll have to do a while loop. So while sc.hasNext. So while there's numbers to read in. I would start by reading in a temp variable first. So read the actual number in. So for variables, I'm going to make int temp. Like that. And then I'm going to say temp equals sc.nextInt. Okay, so let's just kind of recap what we've done here. We've made an array of frequencies. So right now there's this frequency array, and it goes from 0 to 9. This represents numbers 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, all the way up to 91 to 100. And let's just say the temp variable, the number that got read in, was 25. And what we want to do is 25 is a number from 21 to 30. So that's this slot 2 here. What we need to do is we need to increment the value in slot 2 by 1. It needs to go up to 1. So you want to change the value in frequency slot 2. I'm going to leave this blank for a second. plus equals 1. Right? So I don't care that the number is 25, but I care that the number in this slot, in this range, has to go up by 1. Okay, so I'm going to leave this blank for you. You need to figure out, how do I make 25 into just a 2? So what are you going to do to temp to make it into 2? Again, be careful here, because if I read in 30, 30 would also have to go in slot 2. So whatever you put inside here has to make 25 into 2. It also has to make 30 into 2. Okay, so that's pretty much the while loop. Once you've got the histogram array, or the frequency array, filled, the next thing you need to do is you need to print the histogram. So h1 dot print histogram. That's where all the stars are going to print out. That method's going to take a little bit of work, but think about, I'm going to leave this blank for you also. Think about what you need to send over as parameter or parameters. And just to make sure you're on the same page, what print histogram is supposed to do. Print histogram will print out everything from here to probably that big bar right here. That's what print histogram is going to do. Okay, so after we print it, we need to print out the interval with the highest frequency. An interval with the highest frequency is a method that's supposed to return those values, that 21 to 30. So the best way to do that would be to make that part of system.out.print. So I'm going to go over here right now, and I'm going to say, let me extend page a little bit. I'm going to say system.out.print. The interval with the highest frequency is and then after that I want to print out what the actual highest frequency is, which is what the method is supposed to return. So h1 dot highest freq interval, or something like that. Again, I'm going to leave the parameters up to you, so you can figure out what you want to put in here. Right, so that takes care of this line. So this line here, that is supposed to be the highest freq interval. So that method's supposed to return 21 to 30. And then finally, the last thing it's supposed to do is you're supposed to print out what the actual highest frequency is. So I'm going to call this method highest frequency. That returns that number. So this word can print out in the driver just like I did before with interval with highest frequency. Okay, so we can say system.out.print frequency and then plus h1 dot highest frequency. And again, I'll leave the parameter u. Okay, so that should give you a pretty good start. The only things you have to finish off to do the driver, you have to fill in those 4 red boxes. So figure out how to make the temp variable that you read in into the index that's supposed to increment. Figure out what parameters you're going to need to send when you make these methods. Then on the other side, you have to write the histogram class. So you're going to have to write the method for print histogram, highest freq interval, and highest frequency. And hopefully you have a good idea of what those are supposed to do based off of, print histogram does the green, highest freq returns that value, and highest freq int returns that value, highest freq returns the actual number that's the highest value. Okay, so get to work on your hierarchy chart. Let me know when you're ready to have me check it. And as always, if you get stuck or have any questions, please come ask me.